welcome you all to this session, which is working from home. Is it safe and secure? Today, we have got a very powerful panel over here. We have got from Cisco, Mr. Tengku, from ISACA, Steven, Cedric from DU, Firdaus from Khazanah, and Azrul from CSF Advisors. Now, the methodology that we are going to follow in this particular session is that we will be starting with giving everyone 3 to 4 minutes to share his thoughts, right? And it will be one person will be speaking at a time. And once we are finished with these 5 people, 3 to 4 minutes each, then we will be opening it for quick question and answers. So to start with, without further ado, I will ask Mr. Tengku from Cisco to share his thought for next 3 to 4 minutes, please. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic talking about cybersecurity around this the pandemic situation, securing the workforce remotely. And of course, whenever we talk about working remotely, many actually have the concern over cybersecurity, and this is actually true. Since we have the pandemic, there's a lot of cases, okay, around cybersecurity threats that we can see over the media and also over the undisclosed information. I think the most important thing is that whenever we have this situation, it depends on how ready we are, right? To face this new normal, and of course, we're coming from the cybersecurity perspective. It is not to defer or not to hide the cybersecurity threats, but rather to acknowledge and to be aware, right, on what the do's and don'ts. So number one, of course, we talk about the awareness, right? It goes back to the IT users themselves, whether it is actually coming from the employees, whether coming from the partners, customers, or even from the IT department. We need to acknowledge and recognize the threats that we have around the pandemic situation. Then we can actually talk further on how we can actually say that, or how can we feel more safe, right? When working remotely. And of course, coming from this perspective, user awareness, that's number one. Okay, coming from Cisco perspective, of course, we talk about the tool, we talk about the technology. Number one and foremost, we need to verify the identity of the user. If you have many employees working remotely, first you need to ensure that whenever they access to your critical application and resources, you need to verify the identity. Again, based on not only on the research but also on the cases, there are many identity theft, there are many password compromise, there are many malware and spam, right, around this pandemic situation, and it is to steal your credentials. And it is actually very important to verify the identity. That can goes beyond just the normal username and password, but rather multi-factor authentication. It can goes beyond that as well to also verify the endpoint that the user is accessing from, whether it is coming from the trusted devices, whether it comes from the corporate devices or personal devices. And we can actually assign different policy for this kind of access. And this is actually go to the next step, which is actually the moment we're able to verify the identity, we need to ensure that we can secure the access, right? Whenever the user trying to access the critical resources, regardless where they are, right? And earlier I also hear we talk about securing working remotely, whether it's coming from the hybrid perspective or legacy or even fully working remotely. It really depends on which industry we are. But I think this is very, very key to enable secure access. And most importantly, we need to be able to defend against threats. And of course, working remotely, we lose certain control, we lose certain capabilities that we have when we work in a secure environment, like in the office, like in the data center, right, where you have all the sophisticated system, security system that protect you. But whenever we allow the employee to work remotely, we lose this capabilities, and we need to ensure that we need to be able to cover that with the new capabilities, with the new tools, without affecting the productivity of the employees.
That's good. Thanks a lot. I believe it was really very informative, and especially the way you have presented means it was really wonderful. Now, next, I will request Mr. Stephen from ISACA for next 3 to 4 minutes, if you can share your thoughts, please. Mr. Stephen from ISACA, Singapore.
I fully agree with what Tengku has shared earlier. I think working from home definitely has increased the attack surface for cyber threats. The corporate boundary has extended to the home networks. Your work machine, like what he has shared earlier, usually protected in a corporate network environment, is now exposed to attacks within your home network and the internet, which typically have much less protection. So your corporate servers are now exposed to attacks from your home computing equipment, which the hackers are now using as conduits to access your corporate network, say over the VPN or through the cloud, such as Office 365. So these include like wireless routers, your home network, even your smart home IoT devices, your fully secured home devices. I mean, just think about it. When was the last time any of us patch our smart TV? Or we expect it to patch automatically and we check, right? So in addition, folks are also sharing their machines with their children for home-based learning. Right, when the schools are closed and there's a shortage of computers due to the sudden mad rush to purchase notebooks during the lockdown. So users increasingly are falling prey to the COVID-19 themed phishing and malware-laden emails, which are not just targeting their work email addresses that they use, but they're also their own personal Gmail login accounts, their Yahoo accounts that they use on the very same work machines that are previously connected to the office network. So the result of these attack vectors accumulate into breaches with major companies, often both ransomware and business email compromises, where money is incorrectly transferred to the wrong parties, as well as supply chain breaches, such as those with inadequately secured cloud environments. In fact, one research has indicated that there's a 30-fold increase in phishing scams, and an increase of 33% in ransomware payments. So breaches of IT vendors have also been in the news, and there's a lot more fake applications. We hear about fake contact tracing apps that you can just download from the App Store, right? So at ISACA itself, we deem good governance as the realization of business needs and benefits while optimizing risk and resources. So in this new normal, there is definitely increased business need for anytime, anywhere computing driven by the accelerated digital transformation. So as such, the risk appetite has definitely risen. There's a tendency to accept more, initially accept more risk, but correspondingly, many organizations have to take steps to address those risks with compensating controls that cut across the people, process, and technology. Not just to identify the threats, but protect against them, detect, respond, and recover from them. And this comes in the form of enhancing the security of the work machine and home networks, user continuously having their Windows, antivirus, anti-malware updated, even when they're outside of the corporate network. And security also entails enhancing, from the corporate viewpoint, their internet-facing information assets, including their VPNs that have been attacked, and their mobile device management MDMs. And closer visibility is required also to look out for shadow IT risks, to check whether unauthorized software is installed and to manage those insider threats. And I think that this heightened monitoring and the ability to manage cyber incidents across the whole IT ecosystem, not just on an on-premise perspective, but also for cloud services, is important. I mean, the solutions which I shared earlier, like Cisco Umbrella, or even you have the Microsoft Cloud Access Security Broker or Azure Sentinel, all these are very important solutions. And enterprises have to treat their key risk indicators to incorporate both leading and lagging indicators. At the end of the day, it's very important to bear in mind that there is no 100% security. So the question is not whether we can be secure, but how much to meet our risk appetite. So you will need a holistic risk-driven governance approach towards the new normal to ensure the right amount of security for our organization. Thank you.
Excellent. So it was, I believe, a lot of information in such a short period of time. I really appreciate on this. So next is that we will be going with Mr. Cedric from DU. So Mr. Cedric from DU, I welcome you, and it is over to you, and please share your thoughts.
Yes, thank you, Javed. Hi, everyone. So, I mean, my colleagues already spoke about a lot of things. Just let me add a few thoughts from my perspective. I mean, we all know today we are, working from home is the new normal, is staying after COVID-19 is going to stay. But what does it really mean? It means that the traditional perimeter that we as company has invested millions and millions of dollars to protect is not enough anymore, correct? So the traditional perimeter is disappearing. All of a sudden, all the applications are on the cloud. Employees are using their personal devices to work. A lot of these devices are not protected, are not managed by the company. But at the same time, hackers, from their perspective, this is an opportunity for them. They know very well what's happening, and they know that the people who are today the employees in this case, are the weakest link. So they're taking advantage of the situation, and this is why we see an enormous uptake of phishing type attack, of ransomware, really through social engineering techniques. By playing on the emotions of the people that are currently very much distressed, correct? They're having a lot of financial problem, emotional problems, and they're using this in their advantage. So I think the solution is, as my colleagues repeated many times, is once education. Education is extremely important, and it needs to match the security program of the company. But also very important is the culture of the company to adapt. So as an employee, I shouldn't be worried of reporting a phishing attacks, which means that, for example, if I receive an email from my CEO, which I feel it's a bit fishy, it's not standard, it's outside the pattern, I should have the confidence of reporting it. I shouldn't feel worried of reporting it. And I should be very clear about how to report it. What are the different channels that I need to use to be able to report this attack? Because if those are not clearly communicated to me, I will just, forget it and move on with my day. So education culture is very important, because at the end of the day, if we raise the knowledge level of individuals, of each employee within the organization, we will be raising the overall resiliency of the organization. So the organization overall will become more resilient to this type of attack. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, the traditional security controls we have put in place for centralized operation, where everything is in data centers, are no longer sufficient. We need to look also at new type of security controls that really can extend outside the perimeter. I'm not saying that we need to replace everything we've done, definitely not, but we need at least to augment what we have done with new type of technology that are more relying on behavioral type of technology, relying on AI, machine learning, that can detect not only early enough attacks, but also can detect things that are not normal or outside the pattern, and can scale with the organization. That's it from my side. Thank you, Javed.
Okay, thanks a lot. So I really, this is really very important. And I really like the way you have emphasized on education, and really appreciate the way you have given a practical example. Like if a CEO is, means getting a message from CEO, how should you respond? So thank you, Mr. Cedric from Due. Next, I will request Mr. Firdaus from Khazanah to share your thought for next 3 to 4 minutes. Yes, Mr. Mohammad Firdaus from Khazanah, over to you.
Thank you, Javed. So yeah, I think all the panelists have mentioned a list of key items earlier. So I agree with all of them. And for me, the way I look at the current situation with the new norm, they are two items that matter for me, or maybe for many of us. First of all is data mobility. So even before the COVID-19 came into the picture, many companies have implemented solutions for users to work from anywhere, but things have increased tremendously during the pandemic situation. So basically, when people work from home, data can say that data is scattered everywhere. So one thing that one principle that I really like is zero trust. Basically, we control where the data can be read, can be opened, can be edited, on which device, from who, by who. So zero trust actually is playing more important role in this current pandemic situation, because you can't just say that you trust you can, yeah, it's very hard to say, but we have to admit the fact that, you can't trust your employees' environment. It's it's out of our control. So zero trust is one of the principles that I think many companies should look at. I think all the panelists earlier have mentioned many things surrounding zero trust, but this is something that I think should be seriously considered by many companies. Secondly, is on the risk posture. I think with the current situation, like what has been mentioned by Cedric earlier, the data center centric data, IT operation and accumulation of data in on-prem data center is not relevant anymore. Because we need to make data accessible from anywhere. So basically, adoption of cloud is inevitable. So we have to accept that reality. We have to look back at the risk posture. How is our risk posture concerning to cybersecurity, and then how are we going to tackle some issues related to this new risk posture. And maybe companies also should look back at their investment on the cybersecurity. Many more cloud-based solutions given more priority at this point of time. So when we talk about acquiring new technologies, cloud-based technologies, your relationship with third party has also changed, and the way you evaluate your vendors also have also changed. This, I believe that this is what leads to a new way of looking into technology, securing your technology, and also reskilling your team, your security team members or IT team members in regard to security. Because when we go into cloud, I would say a relatively different thing. Comparing to the traditional IT security controls, which were a lot more on-prem. So yeah, I think these are the two things that really matter for me, and I believe that it also matters for many of you.
Thanks a lot. I believe that this is a very important point that you have raised regarding the cloud and security. And I believe that in the question and answer session, we will be taking inputs and the opinion of other panelists as well. Last but not the least, I just want to request Mr. Azrul from CSF Advisors to share your thoughts. So Mr. Azrul from CSF Advisor, please, we are eagerly waiting to hear from you. Over to you.
Thank you, Javed. Hi all. Maybe for all the panelists has been shared about just the importance of the cybersecurity, but maybe I can share from my different perspective from a data center environment. There's usually has basic support functions of two, which is administration and operations. So maybe for those administration, they would probably can adapt to the working from home easily as their normal new norm. However, not really as a practical option for the operations as my team, as they are always believing and need the support staff and required on site for demand and support requests. My personal opinion, future of work will be more flexible on the location, whereas your location may not be more important than what possibly you're able to perform from the remote position. The challenges will be crucial on the available resources that you may need physically on hands-on to support breakdowns or incidents, the data network's stability and bandwidth, the cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities as the high risk in telecommunication network for all the personal and company's confidential data or assets. So the most important factor to enable us to work from home is actually the data connection with a sufficient bandwidth from a good subscription package offered. And second most important factor is that the connection must be trusted and secure for personal and office use. One of the emerging technologies that would be most crucial and relevant to the dynamic changes at work can be the cybersecurity protection application itself. The name, trust, reliability, performance, content history, results are all that matters to customers always. Without the security protections that office systems afford, the firewall and the blacklisted IP addresses, increased reliance on technology, we are far more vulnerable to cyber attacks. So the most obvious risk is that most of our tasks are conducted online, from a basic discussion, meeting, training, presentation, change advisory board meetings, for example, for consent and approval. The change management will be more dependent on the requester to submit the details during the meeting to obtain consent and approval. But HR policies could always cater the needs of employees' welfare and engagement by allowing the enable of maybe digital signatures for all kind of forms of approval in order to effectively adapt the future work culture. Perhaps maybe some standards guideline could also be one of the things that should be able to spread out more and efficient on strategies or how to deal with the business confidentiality, the cyber threats, safety and security concerns, which are crucial factors for the changing work separating models. And I also agree with all the panelists earlier, the self-awareness and exposure to the future technology would be beneficial advantage to the company to own the kind of reliable and knowledgeable staff to adapt and follow, but at the same time is able to manage and take control of the security of the connection, information and data transfer, and all that becoming risk of their own and company. Thank you.
Excellent. So thanks a lot for all of those points. So many points, really appreciate. And I really like this one that you have mentioned that we may be discussing later, like reliability and the performance. So I believe that these two topics of cloud security, reliability and performance, we will be trying to address in question and answer session. So I believe, Fahad, if there are any question, we will take the question and then we will see that how we can address other issues if some time is left. Over to you, Fahad.
Thank you, Javed. In fact, as you've asked, I got the second question as well. So let me start with the first one. It's from Nitin Lahoti. I guess he's from a bank. Okay, I guess he's a banker. So his question type comment is, many organizations, especially large banks, have stringent data security norms for which many data protection measures are taken within offices such as firewalls, restricted use of external devices, etc. However, when an employee works from home, such stringent measures may not be possible. Will that restrict work from home for certain? Can anyone on the panel take this?
Tengku, I believe that if you can answer this, I believe since you are from Cisco and you are handling these kinds of things very often, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll address the question. Actually, it depends on several factors, right? It goes back to the point that I mentioned earlier on the readiness of working remotely in certain scenarios. But when we talk about data security, right? Again, it goes back to how do we actually secure the data? Remember, we have two parts, which is actually data at rest and data in motion, right? So this is actually the area that again it goes back to the readiness, and I think we need to change the way we do things as well, right? If we are not prepared enough, okay, for this kind of scenario, then we might have this challenge when mentioned by the question someone those actually asked the question earlier, right? In terms of all these actually research by the file, but then again, right? Remember, data security alone is not really able to protect at the perimeter level, it really goes across many areas like network, cloud, and also on the endpoint perspective. So whether or not it can be actually applied in the banking sectors, we have seen that actually in the market that people do actually deploy that in the even for the banking environment. But of course, again, it depends on where do you actually host your application, how ready or how do you secure the areas that I mentioned earlier, the network, the cloud, and the endpoint itself, right? To ensure that to ensure that the business continuity can carry on during this situation. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Stephen, can you please add few more thoughts on this topic, please?
Sure. I agree with what Tengku has shared earlier. And I've seen some other approaches as well. For banks, so some of the banks do is they only allow the employees to bring back home office pre-hardened notebooks that have USB drive disabled. It has a pre-deployed VPN client that can only establish to the company with digital certificates installed that only allows these specific notebooks to connect back to the office. Some of the companies also use secure jump holes. So the data that is processed are only processed within the jump host itself, and they cannot copy the data out. Of course, you can argue that you can use a camera phone and try to photograph, takes camera shots of what you see on the screen, but that is really the extreme, and that you have to cover through people and processes. You need to have policies. You need to have acceptable use policy and
excellent. So thanks a lot for that very useful input. Cedric, do you want to add something?
Yes, very quickly. As we mentioned, the traditional perimeter centered around data center has disappeared, correct? And now, in my perspective, the new perimeter is the identity, is the identity of the people. As a result, one way of mitigating, those type of cyber attacks is, banks, and actually not only banks, across industry, they need to look at adopting a kind of identity and access management program. By really covering things like multi-factor authentication, privileged access management tools, really to have better control of who accesses the application and when, and have also more visibility. So going back to what I said, while traditional security controls, are good, they need to be augmented in order to adapt to the new reality, which is really working from home. And all the processes and the culture need to support this transition as well.
Okay, excellent. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate. Firdaus, any thought on this?
Yeah, when you talk about a regulated environment or critical environment, I would see virtualization as one of the powerful tools to address the challenge. But it has to be complemented by a very good identity management system and authentication mechanism, such as multi-factor authentication or biometric. Secondly, it must come with a very good data isolation, which means that all the processing and all the data creation has to be isolated within that virtualized environment only. And I have seen many companies using this kind of solution. I think it works for them. For me also, from security perspective, from my personal perspective, I like this.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. And I believe that I have one more question, and this question I will directly asking Mr. Azrul. Yeah, please, Fahad, the next question is for Mr. Azrul. Please go ahead.
Right. Now, Rachel Chan has put forward this question. What is the first step towards enhancing cybersecurity within your organization?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think as for our data center, we have to work with multiple teams, especially on the service provider, and also the the principle that can provide the security protection applications for all the connection or links that has been established in our data centers. So the first step is that to engage those team to understand the requirement of the security by the companies or the financial institution, for example, so that they can work on the package or guidelines on how to protect or to enhance the security protection on their data center connection. So normally we will work together hands in hand with a few teams to ensure this security protection will be in a good condition. And from time to time, we will also advise or encourage them to do the penetration test to ensure that the level of the security is there and working at all times.
Excellent. So I believe this is very practical, very technical, and very specific answer. Really appreciate. And since we are running out of time, I have to conclude. Before I conclude, what I will do, I will ask each of you to just give us one giveaway that what is the biggest threat, or what is the biggest risk, or what is the one advice that you want to give to the audience. It should be just one liner, right? So guys, please take care of this, right? So since we have got only 2 minutes left, so it will be very quick. One liner from each of you. I will start with Mr. Tengku from Cisco. Yes, what will be your one liner advice as a takeaway for the audience?
All right, thank you so much. So for the quick summary, I'd rather say that to provide the secure remote working environment, number one, remember, verify the identity. Number two, enable secure access. And number three, defense against threats. Because we have to remember that we actually has lose some of the capabilities that we have in the old norm. Even in the new norm.
Very good. Stephen, your one-liner, what is the takeaway, what the audience should remember from this session?
First and foremost, I think it's important to understand your own backyard or the criticality and sensitivity of your assets and your business needs, to have that business impact assessment and have a holistic, risk-driven governance approach towards
yes, governance approach. Very good. Cedric, what is your one-liner takeaway?
It's to have a proper education program targeting all the employees across the organization and supported by HR to make sure they're implemented and everybody is actually taking it seriously.
Excellent. So it is education. Mr. Firdaus, what is your takeaway, please? One liner, please.
Okay, first of all, you need to look at your policy. You need to adapt with the new norm. Secondly, I think I would like to repeat again the zero trust. Would be worth for you to have a look at that. And the point is on the visualization. I think visualization is also something that.
Excellent. That's good. So Azrul, your one-liner, please. Quick one.
Maybe for this time, it is good to. Maybe it's a good time for us to work out a DR plan and test it to ensure that it will work out and on the disaster time like now. So to ensure that all the strategies and the plan work out and can be used for the beneficial to all.
So it is regarding the resilience. So I believe that we are running out of time. So I really want to thank all of the panelists for this wonderful information that you have shared with us. And it was very practical, very informative. So thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.